Take one.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shauna Smith, and I am a part of Sculpture Walk Springfield. I'm a new board member for them, and I serve on the Education and Outreach Committee. And it is my pleasure to be speaking with JOE and TERRY MALESKY today. You've probably heard their names if you're from Springfield or anywhere in this region because they have sculptures all over the place. They have at least 10 public sculptures in Springfield on view currently, and that doesn't even include the sculptures that are in people's backyards that you can see from the road. Now, 4 of those sculptures are currently on view in Sculpture Walk Springfield's collection. They have several in our permanent collection, so they will be up for generations of people to see. And we also have a brand new sculpture by them that is in our current rotation. And we'll be speaking about both of those sculptures today, or all 4 of them. But really what we get to today is talking about their whole artistic practice. So we're not just going to focus on specific sculptures. We're just going to talk to them as artists. How is it that they spend their time? How is it that they came to creating? And it will be a great conversation. If you want to learn more about these wonderful local Springfield, or actually you're from Stratford, Missouri, I should be correct in that. Artists who are they're doing great. They got pieces all over Springfield, but also all over the United States. They're doing a great job working the public sculpture circuit currently. So JOE and TERRY, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you all feeling?
We're fine. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Absolutely. Well, I gave you a small introduction, and I just want to open it up. Is there anything else you would like to tell us about yourselves and how you work as a collaborative team?
Well, we're a husband and wife sculpture team, and retirement has been good for us. We're both retired from our professions, and we get to go out and create whatever it is we want, and we just like that.
I think we've created a lot of things together. We've been married for soon to be 44 years, and so during our time of raising family and everything, we still did a lot of art things, but at that time we used to call them crafts, arts and crafts. So things have evolved, but he's always worked with metal and wood, and I've done papers and paintings, and so we just create what we needed for our home, not really to share with too many people. So.
And it's different now. Now you're doing stuff that's seen by many, many people. So I know you have a really unique story on whenever you transition from calling your work craft related versus art related. So can you all tell us about your lineage as artists and a little bit about New Adventures Sculptures?
Well, when I started this, I'd always made things my whole life. Like Terry said, crafts and stuff. When I retired, I started building steel sculpture. Actually, I bought a bunch of watercolors. I was going to teach myself to watercolor, and decided after a couple of brush strokes, I just need to stick with rusty steel. That's what I know. That's what I know how to do. That's what I do best. So I started making small sculpture, and I got into a gallery, Fresh Gallery, co-op gallery, and it just kind of evolved. And I just enjoyed making the small stuff. And
well, actually, you were in a flea market first.
Flea market, that's right.
The story she was telling you about that. So tell them that.
So I was in the flea market. I started out in the flea market, and the clown Emmett Kelly, his grandson, approached me one day when I was stocking my booth, and he convinced me that this is art. It does not need to belong. It doesn't belong in this flea market. It is art. He spent 30 minutes talking to me about it, and he was the first one that planted the seed in my mind that this is art. So I got into Fresh Gallery, the co-op, on his advice to seek out a gallery. I joined the Southwest Arts and Crafts Guild and done the Art in the Park show, and was still just a maker. My first year in the show, I was voted by the other artists as best of show. And it was that day forward that I realized I am an artist. I'm not just somebody that makes stuff. And and I reflect back to Emmett Kelly's grandson. I did not catch the fellow's name, but I am indebted to him for his taking the time and talking to me about it and encouraging me. So, but I'm an artist, and then Terry, she's always been artistic also, from painting she's done in our house to the walls itself are artwork, the way she decorated things.
And I made all the tile in this house because I didn't want just plain tiles. I wanted designer looking tiles. Have you ever looked at the price of designer looking tiles? I'm also very frugal. So I said, I can make these tiles. So we actually lived in the shop. We always build a shop first. But this time when we built this house, we lived in our shop for 1.5 years. And he'd go to work, but he built me a big table, and I bought a giant rolling pin. It's not a regular size rolling pin. And I would drive down to Nixa to L&R, get the clay, bring it back, roll them out, and then let them dry. Then I'd run them back down and kiln them, and then bring them back and glaze. And that was all a learning process. I'm kind of like him. In school, I did have art in junior high twice, and I had pottery during one of those classes. And then I had just my one art class in high school. But I always loved clay and was really intrigued with pottery. So did I have to throw some of those tiles away? Yeah, back in the bucket, because they wouldn't warp out until it was too late to see that they were going to warp. But enough to do my house what I wanted. So that's just an example of how we want something, we just do it. We don't, it's a challenge, and we love that too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love the story that you all share about really just spending the time that you have now dedicated to your art practice. And I love that you all work together. Can you talk a little bit more about how you do work together as a collaborative team? So what aspects does Joe do versus Terry do? Or do you deliberate the different paint choices together, or the final forms, the sketches, are all of that a part that you work on together? Can you share a little bit more about the different aspects that you both do to create the public sculptures?
So the design work that I call it spontaneous design. I've only done 1 or 2 sculptures that had a drawn out plan of what I was going to attempt. Everything else is a picture book in my mind, what I'm going to start at. And I just go out and I start gathering up the steel, the rocks, whatever I'm going to use. And I just start building on it. One design, while I'm working on one design, another one will pop into my head and I'll start building on it. And then along comes Terry and reminds me, you should probably finish one thing and start another thing. So I do a lot of the creative, inspirational stuff on spontaneous design, and she tries to keep me in line, keep me focused. And that's what she does best, is organizes our team and keeps us in one focused direction. And it just seems to work that way. And then she wants to add color. I like rust. Color has been the biggest thing the biggest improvement we've made on our art. I have to admit that. Otherwise, you would just see a bunch of rusted sculptures. You'd see 10 rusted sculptures sitting around Springfield if it wasn't for her. Mm-hmm. She's encouraged me to branch out into stainless steel. And I've since done stainless this year and a copper sculpture this year that I would have never have attempted. I would have just stayed with rust. So that's.
And I think as far as, so many have become commission pieces, which kind of, I wouldn't say overwhelms him, but he functions better as a person that can just do what he wants spontaneously. But yet commission pieces are nice because you're fulfilling a need that somebody wants. And these last couple of years, we've ended up with 4 memorials. And so I think only one didn't really know what they wanted per se, but so you just go and interview with them and just listen to their heart, and then well, actually, the first one, Dr. Tickle, was actually drawn by somebody else, but it was a collaboration of us three keep meeting with the wife of the person, you know. And so again, we're just like, okay, what is this? We'll just go with it, you know. And I find that one to be the most rewarding because you're actually sharing in their lives and helping them journey through this, um, you know, journey that they sometimes weren't expecting. And so when we do, neither one of us are good sketchers, actually. So a lot of times we just talk through, and like I have a whole list of things I would like to make. And he's always telling me, you need to learn to weld then, you know, because I thought, oh, I got another idea. So I learned to just put them in my notes in my phone. And if we ever get to them, we'll get to them. But so we do talk through, and we even do talk through the colors. When we did Groovy Peace Sign, he wanted to keep it rust. And I said, no, that one definitely needs to be colored like the 60s. I mean, we grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I know what I would paint on it, you know. And so I kind of walked him through what it would look like, and he was good with that. And it's turned out to be a very popular piece, you know. So I think we talk through a lot of the stuff, but a lot when it comes to building it, he just goes, and there's a few times that he needs me to come out and help, or he'll say, I want you to look at this, and is this set right? Does it look right? And we talked about that this morning, how many times I've walked him off a ledge of recent, especially with the commissions, because as an artist, I think he gets frustrated if his idea doesn't just go together quickly. You know, he wants it to go together fast, and sometimes you have to make mistakes to get to the part where you are happy with the outcome of the project. Hubcaps was one of them.
Hubcaps was one.
Yeah, I know a little bit about the change that happened with Hubcaps, so I think it would be great to hear a little bit more about that, because you know, that's the thing about working in public sculpture. And it's funny that you're spontaneous and you just want to build on the go, yet public sculpture has to be incredibly secure to last at least a year, but most likely many, many years. So I like that you have to carefully walk on that line of following your intuition, but also kind of redesigning when things need, or calling Terry out whenever you need a second opinion.
We tease that I'm quality control too, because I will sit and feel the sculpture, because again, he's a man and his hands are more rough and stuff, but I feel the sculptures and make sure there's no rough spots, and then I'll point them out, like this still needs grinding, or we don't want any sharp edges or anything like that. So
keep it safe for everyone.
Right.
Now, so this is a permanent piece here in Springfield, Missouri, called Alone in a Crowd. And there's some close-up photos on the right. To the left is the full piece. And then, of course, there's a couple different seasons represented in these photographs. And now, is this a place, Terry, where you came in with the idea of color?
Yes. Yeah. He made this miniature one and actually had it in Art Fest that very first time, and it sold in Art Fest, the small model. And then he wanted to create another one, and then this opportunity came up, so we entered, you know, the possibility of being chosen. And that's where I said, I think it would be, if it's going in Jordan Valley, I think it needs to be colorful. I don't think it needs to be just one plain rusty color.
Yeah.
And he agreed, and so we actually made the model colored. And on that one, I felt more comfortable with the committee choosing the colors. I got to pick which person had what color, but I wanted to have the committee pick the colors, because they chose it, you know, and so the committee actually picked the actual colors. And
nice, that's interesting. Would you like to share anything else about this piece? Or?
Well, it's one of my favorite pieces. It started out, like Terry said, a bookshelf size sculpture, and it has philosophy to it that it's good to be alone in a crowd sometimes. It's not a bad thing all the time to be shunned by the crowd because you don't agree with what they think, you don't agree with their actions. If you'll notice, the person that's alone is the tallest and standing straight. He's confident in who he is and what he stands for. And it hopefully it goes out as a message to the public that that's what they'll see in it, that it's good to be your own person, stand up for what you believe in, even if you're standing alone, is this what goes with it. So yeah, it was a real honor to me when it was accepted and commissioned to be and stand in that park right there. I could not have bought a piece of real estate in Springfield that had better exposure than that park has. And here they paid me to put it there rather than me have to do that on my own dollar. So
we drive by it all the time, even if we're not going that way. He likes to see it. And
it's definitely one of my favorite sculptures and most rewarding sculpture in my career so far is that sculpture alone.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. I love hearing that you have genuine love for the work that you do, that it's not just something that you do just because you have the time or to make a little money here and there. It really is something that you care about. You put your heart and passion into it.
I'm glad that when my grandkids get older, they can drive by it and show their kids, your Popsy built that. And, you know, they can have ownership in Springfield and the trails, the Frisco Trail and that sculpture right there and some of the other work that's around.
And we've talked about that and they talked about it. So every time, I mean, they came for the commissioning, you know, I mean, they're a part of that. So, and our oldest granddaughter, she appears to be very artistic already. And so we're, of course, we encourage that with any child we meet or any person. Joe's encouraged so many people that say, oh, I'm not artistic. And we're like, oh, you can't say that, you know, you might be, and, you know, maybe you just need to try some things. But so we're excited to see what our grandchildren turn out like, because they all have their different personalities and they all have their different gifts. But the number one, she seems to be very drawn to art. So
it's wonderful. I skipped past this one, but I want to go back because this is your other permanent installation from Sculpture Walk Springfield. And this one's titled Dandelion. And as you can see, it's quite different from the last one. Would you like to share a little bit about this sculpture?
I'd like to tell you it's one of my favorites. Well, I think they're all one of my favorites, so that may get old in this conversation. But it's got a little bit of movement to it. Obviously, it lit up inside to change colors. That was the goal, was to try to get some lighting into sculpture. So it was like a test piece. We researched the dandelion and I thought about it, and it goes so far back to every little kid that can come along and pick up a dandelion puffball and blow the seeds off. And I feel like it's got to go back to the first kid ever born has picked up a dandelion and done this. So it's something we've all done and we can all relate to. And that's kind of what we're getting across there also, is that it would bring every person that looks at it back to their childhood, remembering when I used to do that. I used to pick them up.
And I don't know if he actually remembers it. I think it was this one, not the puffball, that your leaves were not like shaped like the dandelion at first. Yeah. You had just the regular, and then I came out and said, but if it's dandelion, it's got to have the dandelion leaf, the different. Yeah. And that had to change.
Yeah. This is one of my favorites too. I love flowers, so that's a part of it too. And I know you've done other flowers, which we get to look at on a smaller scale a little bit later here. I'm gonna show another one. Oh, this is some lovely people posing with.
That's our family.
That's our family. They are lovely.
We wanted that picture because they've adopted the little boy from China, and we purposely put it that way, like he's standing alone, and then we are spread out. That's my daughter and my other two granddaughters at the time. I have more than that now, but we were showing how you can also be connected. You can think of Alone in the Crowd as you feel the need to reach out to this person who's standing by themselves in case they're hurting. And so we did it kind of an opposite philosophy. Because when Joe first built that, I was like, that's sad the way he said that. But then I said, I look at it like that person needs somebody to come over and talk to him and love on him, you know? So that's why I said, I want this picture with my family when they came out for the commissioning. So
Absolutely. Bridging that gap.
yes. Yeah.
Right, like of creating a human chain. And Terry, that's you standing there, is it? Is this
It
you?
is.
I
Yeah.
didn't realize that before.
It is, yeah.
Funny. Well, this is just recently installed. It's our part of Sculpture Walk's current rotation called Against the Wind. And this looks like another moment where we get to see something that might before have stayed steel or even got rusted, but instead this time it's been painted. Would you all like to share a little bit about this whimsical sculpture?
So I spend a lot of time in a salvage yard up in Lebanon that has a scrap metal yard. And I seen all the pieces laying in a pile. And as soon as I seen it laying there on the ground, I thought, I got to have all that. I know exactly what I want to build. And this is what it came out. And it's part of the Bob Seger song from Against the Wind, Running Against the Wind. And I put the two of them together. And honestly, I was already into we got to color stuff more. I was already convinced we got to color stuff more. And I had picked them colors out right off the bat. Blue is probably one of my favorite colors. And and I like the way the gray matches with it. And that's the design on it. I think, Picasso painted a painting of his wife and her eyes were crooked. And and then I'd later seen a picture that David Duncan took of Picasso's wife that Picasso worked off of that photograph. And I could see in that photograph why Picasso painted the eyes canted. They weren't the same level. Anyway, the eyes being forward is from inspiration from Picasso's painting to put them, they're way up out of proportion on where they would normally be on a person. And I think the hair flying backwards was her idea.
Well, actually,
it just kind of adds to it. And it even goes with the 60s guys with their comb overs today that catch the wind and blow back. And that's what we've got there.
Yeah. Well, I was actually still working at the time. And I remember when I came home, he had it sitting out and he had said, I know what I want it painted, so you're going to be painting it. And then as I worked with it, I was like, it needs hair too. And I think I came up with Against the Wind because he asked me all the time, what would you name her? What does that remind you of? And I said, it looks like a guy with a mustache going back. And that's why we felt like I said, it needs to have hair too. And that way it looks like, and he's walking against the wind. And we just laughed because Bob Seger is one of our favorite. That was our first concert we went to together when we were younger. We've never quit listening to him. So Against the Wind was, that's why it was named that.
Yeah.
Collaboration. There you go.
Yeah. And we're going to take a look here at another brand new installed beautiful sculpture. This is also permanent, so people can see it for a long time. And I know there's a backstory. I'm sure you can talk about this one for a while, but earlier in our conversation, you mentioned that you've once had to really redirect, and this is the sculpture that you brought up, just so people have that sort of point of contact. This is called Hubcaps on Route 66, and Terry and Joe, would you like to share a little bit about this sculpture with us?
I mentioned that I like searching out for parts, being in the scrap yards or not. So when I was commissioned on this piece, I thought this is going to be fun just finding the hubcaps. And we did have fun searching out flea markets and things. And I finally found a gold mine in Springfield in a guy's attic of
Parts store.
Parts
Gears.
store, yeah, a gear store. I think it's B&M Gears on Traffic Way. Anyways, upstairs in this dusty old attic, all these hubcaps were just wired to the rafters. And we spent an hour and a half, couple hours digging through them. And the person, the guy that owned them gave us a great price on them too, rather than what they were actually worth as to car collectors. So it was fun in that. So we go home and I start putting them together with my first idea, and it just wasn't going good. And I had spent, I think, 3 weeks trying to build a sculpture with them, and we had to totally redirect. I had built an armature in it and thought I could attach the hubcaps to the armature, and it was disaster. It was, everybody just looking at it was going to get cut from it. It was had so many jagged edges and sharp edges. And I was to the point of just saying, you know what, I can't do this. And my inspiration came out and said, we don't work like that. We don't quit. I said, yeah. So now then, after I redirected and started all over, I come out with one of my favorites.
Loves it now. Hated it for a while. Loves it now.
So, yeah.
And sometimes that's what it takes. Like I was telling him this morning, I get that if you go out to build something and it's not going together, and much less spend 3 weeks and seeing it's not getting any better, I understand the frustration. So it was just going out, talking through it. Let's think logically. What would the other step be? And he had a plan B, and we went with plan B, and it worked out great.
Well, I had never worked with stainless steel before. I had bought the welder to do it, and I had never even started the thing. And a friend of mine, Doug Cox, another sculptor that has sculptures in Springfield, he was a ton of help just talking to me on the phone and telling me how to do things, sharing what he knows. There's a lot of artists won't share their secrets, and they won't talk about how they do things. Doug's not that way. Doug will share, and he basically taught me how to weld stainless steel over the phone. And trial and error. I'm really proud of the way it turned out for a first time stainless steel sculpture.
And that may be something a lot of normal people wouldn't even understand. The difference in a rusty piece of steel and a stainless steel and a copper. I mean, they're different. He had to learn the difference of them and the welders, and how to navigate that is not easy.
The significance of what this sculpture will bring to Springfield also is just astronomical. The day we were installing it, a couple showed up that was from Florida, and they were driving 66 from somewhere in Arizona. They were doing a section that they hadn't been on, and they were like from Arizona to Illinois they were going. And they were the first ones to stop and, wow, look at this, take pictures of it and pose with it. And they were really thrilled that the artist were there. There was 5 or 6 of us around it. And anyway, it was pretty neat that the amount of coverage that it's going to get on the Route 66 Facebook page that they have, and the amount of people that travel that highway from worldwide are going to recognize Springfield. Hopefully that'll be the icon that they pick up.
Absolutely. You all should create a hashtag to go along with it, so you can follow over the years all the people that take selfies with this sculpture. The stainless steel has such an impact on this. I think it was such a smart decision because it's so shiny. The hubcaps are so shiny. I know you took a lot of time and you had help with your grandchildren cleaning that off. But
you read that on Instagram, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were good. They did good. All of them.
Beautiful. So I have a question for you all that kind of reflects all of the sculptures we've looked at so far. So we've only focused on the 4 sculptures that you all have on view for Sculpture Walk Springfield right now. And again, there are many, many others in the local area and many, many others across the United States. But one of the things I notice when I look at these, just even these 4, is that you really work with such a diverse variety. a variety of material, a variety of surface treatments, a variety of techniques, which you sort of talked about with the different techniques that go into working with different kinds of metals. So I don't think a lot of artists can do this. I think this is a very unique, the variety you're able to work with is I'm just very interested in it. So if you would like to share a little bit about how variety plays into your creative life or into your work, I'd love to hear about that.
So I spent most all my life, my career, working production shops, and the same thing over and over and over again. Then when I get out and I start making sculpture, I'm drawn to we're talking the small bookshelf sculpture that I was making for the art galleries that I in. At one time I was in 5 art galleries, so I had to make a lot of stuff, and I kept taking pictures of things, and then I found myself going back to the pictures and trying to duplicate, and a light bulb came on and said, why am I trying to duplicate things? Don't do that. And also I had looked at other artists and, in my spare time and researched what everybody was doing. And I found most artists, when I hit on a design, they beat it into the ground. They just keep making the same thing over and over with a little variation change. I think it's partly adult attention deficit syndrome. Is once I make something once or twice or 3 times, I get bored with it. I'm going on to the next phase. So the diversity in the sculptures is where them things kind of combine. Is I don't want to do mass production anymore. That was a career. I don't want that anymore. I get tired of doing the same thing over and over. So let's make all new stuff. Partly it's what I see when I find the material, what I'm going to do with it. And that's a lot where it comes from. Anything you want to add to it?
Well, actually, that's what I kept telling him as far as color, because like he said, he would go with just rust and stay with rust. And not everybody likes rust. And then I was always drawn to the stainless sculptures, and Doug Cox is a perfect example, and just how perfect his welds were, and just it takes him longer to create because he just focuses and spends so much time on one sculpture, which I know that's not Joe's personality like that. But I was encouraging him to try to get into stainless steel. And I did encourage him into painting too, because bringing the color into it. Because I saw exactly what he said, that a lot of artists only stay with one medium. They don't incorporate rocks, and they don't, do the things that come natural to him to do. If he was doing them in smaller ones, now we went bigger. We just recently took a sculpture, which I had posted to a powder coater, with giant rocks in it, because and those are Colorado rocks, because it's going to Colorado. So not very many could do that, but he can figure out how to get those rocks, even giant rocks, in there. And so I believe diversity and being able to hit on a lot of different people's preferences is always good. So it shows that you have that ability to make a sculpture that they might want, where they don't want a rusty one, they want one that's painted, or they want one that's copper, which is what happened this year, because somebody had a lot of copper and they wanted a sculpture out of it, and he made a sculpture out of copper. So
I love hearing that backstory about working production and having to do repeated forms over and over, and you're just not interested in that anymore.
Yeah. I tell people that when I left the machine shop, I threw away my micrometers, and a lot of my sculptures, I never measure anything. I just hold it up and look at it. That's where it goes. And that's how it's going to be from here on out.
That's amazing. If there are any art students out here listening to this, any college students, don't take that specific advice from Larry yet. Wait until you're out of school, and then you can get there.
Yeah.
I think that's really amazing and unique. Honestly, it just sounds like you have a lot of fun whenever you work on this. When you work on these sculptures, it sounds like
most of the time. Yeah.
Now you talked about collecting, or you talked about bringing rocks into your sculptures, and this is something I'm very curious about. I apologize that this photo is a little blurry. I took it off their Instagram, but one of the things that I identify with the Malesky sculptures is the use of natural materials and specifically found rocks. So I found this Instagram that they had collected rocks from Michigan, and this isn't a sculpture, this is just them displayed, but I have a couple photos here. And I know you've probably made hundreds of rock sculptures because a lot of times you do them on a smaller scale, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I only grabbed a few, but I do want to kind of flip through these as you all talk about the use of raw material, of natural material. How did this become a part of your artwork? And it sounds like this has kind of been a lifelong activity, just collecting rocks and.
Right. I have always been a rock hound. And I took that picture of the Michigan ones just on that steel because I wanted to show,
Petoskey stones.
the Petoskey stones. But there's other ones there. That one down on the bottom that kind of looks like a bone. They're really cool, and they're not going to go in a sculpture or anything, but it's just, we just love collecting things like that.
Yeah.
And we've always collected sand and rocks, and so I think it was just a natural. He wanders a lot, and when he starts wandering, he finds a lot of rocks. Or even like when we go to Stockton Lake, or we went walking one time on the shoreline, and I kept saying, "There's a fish, there's a fish, there's a head," and he was doing the same thing. So we can see fish heads or faces in these rocks, and that makes it kind of hard to pass it up.
And so how did the rocks start to become part of your sculptures?
How did they start to become part?
Yeah, was that an easy thing for you to incorporate, like a natural starting point for you?
It was the challenge. It was, okay, here's a rock. How can I make that work in a piece of sculpture? And I've learned how to drill them with diamond drills or masonry drills. It takes a good drill motor to do it. So my steel that comes out of the ground, and it's iron ore at one point, and then it's refined and it's turned into steel that I can use and that we can recognize. And it just seemed natural to incorporate the oldest thing made with that steel, and that would be a rock. When I believe God formed the earth and he formed the rocks, he formed everything about it. And it's like he's got a hand in my sculpture. He's handing me these rocks to use, and they're just there for picking up. Part of it is thriftiness, is I don't have to buy them. I can have them. Well, I do buy them, but
Part of the Colorado rocks we did.
Just the use of it, yeah. And then to get it to balance is the challenge. It's an engineering type achievement that, how am I going to make it stand? How am I going to make it balance and make it and fill in negative space with a rock? And it's just a challenge. It's a challenge of it, like the one hanging suspended inside the cage. It will move. The viewer can interact with it if they want to. And the sculpture is designed where no matter how they swing that thing, it's not going to fall over. And
Yeah, I think that one is a perfect representation of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not just physical, but visual balance, asymmetry.
And it's kind of designed to look like the springs and the turnbuckle are actually doing something, but they're not. They're just, it was going to stand without them. It just to give a visual to the viewer.
And he let me pick the color on that one, and I of course went with the aqua. I love aqua, and he's like, oh. Because he likes gray and blue. And I said, no, for me, the contrast of the steel and the colors of the rock, that aqua gives it a pop. It gives more attention to me to the rocks and the steel than if it was, I feel like a blue or a gray would have blended right in, and it wouldn't give the other parts of the sculpture the pop that they needed.
So the rock sculptures and the natural earth materials also you use quite a bit in your smaller scale sculptures. So this is, I think I maybe found, well, I think I only found one example
Yeah.
on of that, but there's a lot. If anyone is local to Springfield, Missouri, or the surrounding area, you can go to Fresh Gallery, and are there other places that your smaller scale sculptures are on view?
Um, Blue Stem in Columbia,
Okay.
and there are a few in Fresh Gallery now. I've since got out of the smaller. I've got out of the galleries. It's just hard to keep it filled. Um, I spend most of my time on the larger stuff now.
Is there something that the larger scale creating offers you that the smaller scale doesn't? Is there something that you really like about working on the larger scale?
It's the challenge of how to do it, how to move it. It's the wow factor when somebody walks up and sees it. Wow, how'd you do that?
Getting
I
picked.
go back to a kid, and I feel like I'm a kid. And you want to show your mom, look at what I made, look at what I made. And that's the wow factor that I'm trying to get, I think, is what satisfies me. And is when somebody walks up and they just don't understand how it could happen.
Yeah.
I I think that's a lot of the drive for me. This piece we're looking at with the elements, 5 different elements I seen in it. I woke up with that on a Sunday morning in my mind. I had never even planned on anything about that, and went out and built it and spent most of the day on it. And Terry posted it on Instagram, and Mike and Jerry Ilque spotted it on Instagram and bought it. So within one day, I thought, okay, this is how artists should work. This is how the art world should work. Make something and sell it same day. But they're friends of ours, and they had to have it, and it's now in Jerry's garden. And it was just a pleasant piece to work on, just from the inspiration to the installation.
For me, I think the bigger sculptures, the reason that kind of evolved in that, because first of all, they take longer. He can make a mantelpiece or a tabletop piece pretty quickly, especially if he knows what he has in his mind. But I also think it's part of you have to enter these sculpture walks. So you have to send them images, you have to do the statements, and they select you if they want you in the sculpture walk. And I think for me and for him, that's an honor that you're selected. And then what that has done for us is we've ended up with commission pieces out of that, because they've seen our pieces on the sculpture walks. Colorado's a good, for instance. We actually sold a piece last year that was on a sculpture walk, and then we got commissioned for 2 pieces this year, because they had found on the Douglas County website our sculptures, and they were intrigued because they looked different. They weren't a typical bronze or things that they're used to seeing. They wanted something different looking.
Yeah. We have a couple more questions, and we have talked for just about an hour now. So,
wow.
And I know you have somewhere to be. So I wanted to ask you, Terry, let me in on another practice that's a part of your creative life, and that is of hand building houses from the ground up. And so this is an image of one of those houses, and you can, if you just look behind Joe and Terry there, you can see some of their hand-built elements right there, the wall. And I would just love to hear more about this. It makes a lot of sense to me as sculptors that you're able to do this. I grabbed a few images of a YouTube video that is actually a tour of Joe and Terry's house. So if you want to see it, you can find that video on YouTube.
Yeah. So this is the house that we currently live in, our 5th house. And again, we just evolved when we first married. We knew someday we would want to build a house. So I think we were in our first home maybe 6 years, 7 years that we didn't build. And so our first home was as country as you could get. The big front porch, bay windows, dormers. That was my dream house. Wood floors. I mean, we laid the oak flooring and everything. And again, he had trade school and shop classes. So we never have used blueprints. We've never, we just look at pictures or we design it, one of the two, and then we change it up. And so eventually the house before this one, I called it semi-contemporary because I decorated it semi-contemporary. The outside was still kind of traditional looking, but when we knew we wanted to go contemporary on this design inside and out. So it's been a fun house. Again, this one was strictly all our design and just talking through and coming up with what we wanted. And it's so funny, so many people have come into our house and they're like, have you guys contacted 417? I mean, this, is now like 12 years old, but I've always said, even color schemes and stuff, I always seem to be like a couple of years ahead of time. And I was laughing because I was thinking about the chairs, because if you heard the colors that they're in my office right now, the colors for this year are yellow and gray. Well, I have yellows and grays that I did 3 years ago in the office, So, and again, yeah, it's just working together. I mean, we poured all those concrete countertops. I was out the back door that's on the other side of that table with a cement mixer, and I'd mix up the concrete and he'd come with a wheelbarrow and wheel it in and dump it onto the countertop. So
Yeah.
a lot of people have asked us, how are you guys still married? Because most people can't even build number one house together. And I said, well, that's because they use contractors. And if you have to rely on somebody else, it is frustrating. But when it's just you, I mean, if you don't get it built, it's your fault,
Right. And the desk here that's in the left photo, is that also a hand-built piece?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Before I retired, I wanted my office. I was redecorating my office. It seems kind of crazy, but I was retiring in 5 months. But I wanted to have an office that I could move back to my house because I knew I would be working on new adventure sculpture stuff in here. And so I showed him a picture and he's like, okay. And so he made me my desk.
It's lovely. Let's see. So the one last question, Joe, did you want to add anything about hand building the houses?
I think she covered it all. I have a hard time paying anybody to do anything for me. And so we learn how to do things ourselves. I grew up making things. We didn't have video games. We didn't have a MasterCard to just go down and buy whatever toys we wanted. We learned how to make things. We learned how to fix things. And that's where a lot of my ability comes from. I've only had one art class in high school that I can remember, and I don't recall doing a project in that class. I'm sure I passed it with a D- just to move me down the system. But I had every industrial art class you could imagine, even into the advanced ones. I was constantly in metal shop or wood shop, and so it just comes natural. And spending summers on a farm, learning how to work, where you had to do things on your own. So building a house was, yeah, I can do that. And this house that you showed all the pictures about, I drew it out on a piece of cardboard. I drew out a floor plan and put clear tape over it to protect it so I could read it and see what it was going to be. I still got that blueprint hanging in my shop.
Yes.
And, that's all I needed. I had it built in my mind. And I've incorporated metal barn siding. There's a place that has metal culverts from driveway culverts for columns, and there's a spiral staircase or semi-spiral staircase that just made out of industrial iron, concrete, natural bare concrete, and it was just a real fun project. About all I can add to it.
While we were living in his art shop, now his art studio.
Right.
So I had one chair where I usually sit and eat breakfast, that I can view the whole house from sitting in that one spot. And that's how it's an open floor plan, and that's what we were after, and a large kitchen. And it's just a nice, it's one of my favorite houses. I need to, if I ever build another one, it's just going to be a single floor of something similar is what I would do. But we're still healthy enough and active enough, we can still climb stairs.
She keeps talking about building another one. I say, this is it.
That's probably it, yeah, after 5.
It's got to feel so good to just sit in your chair and be surrounded by something that you all made together, that you made possible. And then to walk outside and see your lovely shop and all of your sculptures on your lawn, that's really got to feel great. And I hope you do feel great about it.
Yeah.
We do.
It's rewarding, definitely.
I have one last question for you. So I noticed that Joe teaches and works in a couple different places. And this goes back to earlier, I believe, Joe, you mentioned that you had somebody who helped you teach who talked to you on the phone about using stainless steel. And you mentioned in that not every artist wants to share their secrets or their knowledge. And you are obviously somebody who is very willing to help teach others, no matter what age, whether they're high schoolers or adults or retired folks, to learn how to build sculptures as well. And I'm curious about how being an educator plays into your practice, or how is it that you think about sharing knowledge with other people?
It's rewarding to be able to plant a seed and to get someone else encouraged. And that's the satisfaction I draw from it. I've met so many people because of this art world, the 7 or 8 years I've been doing it. And I'll ask them, are they artists? And usually the first thing out of their mouth is, oh no, I'm not an artist. And it reflects back to Emmett Kelly's grandson telling me that this is art. And I'll say, well, what can you do? Well, come to find out, they are artists. Everybody has an artistic ability. They just may not recognize it yet. And to be able to help nurture and encourage, and I think that's mostly what it is encourage people to do things, that they can do it. The girls in the photo on the left, none of them had ever welded. And they've learned how to weld. They learned how to use my plasma cutter. I can give them, they're not welders by any choice, by any means, but I've given just enough encouragement to take the welding class in high school. That's just some of the girls from Stockton High School is where they're at. And I've done, I think, 4 classes up there. And this year, COVID shut it down. Hopefully next year we can do another one. But I'm hoping that they'll take the high school welding class, learn how to weld, and be inspired to build things. They are artistic. I have found that women tend to be more artistic with metal than men are. They have, when a woman makes something or a girl makes something, it's usually top notch, where the guys are just all kind of average. And I fall in the average because I know some women that are way better than me also. And that's where I put myself. So, and then I go down to Eureka Springs School of Arts also. And it's been 3 or 4 years. And it's usually people down there that have signed up for the class. And there's usually 4 to 6 in the class. COVID shut it down again this year. And hopefully this next year I'm scheduled for late April, I think, or June. I think they moved it to June, yeah, because of COVID already. But it's rewarding too, because it's people that they've invested in to come and spend a weekend. And we usually start out with one small project that I ask them to make, and then it's open shop. And it's me trying to teach them what I know in a weekend, and they usually have an idea what they want to do, and we take them that direction. And they've all come out with 2 or 3 completed sculptures.
Wow.
And it's a fun weekend. But to encourage somebody that there's more they can do, and to convince them they're creative. I've had a few people come out to my shop, and it's a little bit more of a challenge on that kind of a basis. I've got to where I've kind of limit how many people I invite. But it's something I'm passionate about is encouragement, encouraging other people. And that's what I'd like to do.
And I think you do it obviously with your teaching, but I think your sculptures encourage people as well. Just to walk up to something and be filled with wonder, or have that wow factor that you both talked about earlier, just to bring joy to somebody's day, or to have that thought process of how can something like this be created? How can this be made? So your inspiration to encourage others or to empower others, I think, bleeds into everything that you both do. So before we wrap up today, I just want to offer you an kind of open invitation to share anything that we didn't get a touch on, or anything that you'd like to share with our audiences.
Well, I think we like to, another reason we really like the outdoor bigger sculptures is I feel like it touches community. It has the opportunity to impact community, even more so than small sculptures in a gallery. I mean, I think to a certain extent, those that visit the gallery have an interest of art to a certain extent, where a piece that's out and people are driving to work all the time or passing it by, they may not necessarily be connected to the art world, but seeing that big piece might all of a sudden realize how that helps community. And just having stuff like Sculpture Walk Springfield, that it's a good thing because it's free and they can, take a date night. I've encouraged a lot of my friends, take a date night, pick a restaurant downtown and get that map of Sculpture Walk. It doesn't take long to walk them. And just, I'm excited about having AutoCast this year because I think that's really a good one if they will download that app and be able to listen to the artist talk to and looking at the sculpture. But I also like that they can just walk up and get their own interpretation, because Joe and I have found that out several times for sculptures that we've made, that it's who looks at it. We may have our own interpretation of what it meant, what we named it and why, but they might have a whole different interpretation on it. And you're right, joy is one word that I like. If they have joy in their heart after they've looked at that, I'm a happy person.
Wow.
It's like Terry said, it's free. Public art is free. It doesn't cost you anything to go look at it. And that's a good thing in this day and age where stuff costs so much money, especially with the COVID thing. You can go do a sculpture walk and stay relatively safe. Every sculpture you look at, you can come up with your own interpretation. You can interact with it how you want. I've enjoyed some people that have named my stuff. I have enjoyed ignoring other people's ideas on what I should build. You build it. Everybody's got an opinion, and that's what's great about it, is everybody's got an opinion and they can change things and make it how they want to. We have a dog that follows us, Lily. Lily follows us around. She's got her own website, I think, or Instagram.
She's on
page.
Instagram. Shauna probably knows her.
You could take your pets with you, and the pets follow, and they enjoy it. I've seen Lily climbing on sculptures and inside of the hubcaps on 66. And it's just fun.
It's fun.
I don't know what else I could say about it. I could probably go on and talk for another hour about it. I won't.
Well, I do want to mention too, I said I had a list in my phone, and one of your questions that we probably don't get to because we're out of time, but is there anything that you wish you could make that you had the resources? That I definitely do, Shauna. I definitely do. And one in particular that we just recently, actually, because neither one of us are sketchers, And one of my friend's granddaughters is very artistic, has been ever since she was younger. And I've been watching her face or her Instagram. And I finally told Joe, I said, I'm going to reach out to her and see if she can't sketch this sketch that we want to make for us. And I know it's going to be a fantastic, popular sculpture. And she agreed to do it, sketched it for us. And it took her quite a while. And then she finally kept saying, I don't think it's good enough. I don't want to share it with you. And I could sense that. She's just turned 16, right? So I reached out and I said, listen, please send me what you have. I said, here's my last sketch, our last sketch of a, and I sent it to her. And I said, it can't be worse than this. And she laughed and said, no, yours is a good sketch. I was like, okay. She sent us the sketch. It was exactly what we wanted. And she didn't have enough self-confidence to send that to us, right? So when I talked it up, I said, I love it. I'm going to send you a check, you know, and she was just thrilled. You could just tell even through Instagram. I didn't never talk to her on the phone, but she was just boosted up. Well, then when I talked with my friend, that's her granddaughter, she said, you don't know what that did to her self-esteem, you know, but wait for that sculpture because hopefully it gets done this year.
Yeah.
Ooh, you have to get a photo with with her and that. That's wonderful.
And
And hold up her sketch.
I am. I told her, I said, whenever we get the sculpture done, we can't do it now because we don't want to reveal it and anybody steal it before we get it made. So, but I think it's going to be a very popular sculpture. Yeah.
Wow. Joe and Terry, I'm so grateful to have had this wonderful time to talk to you today. If anybody wants to reach out to you, please take a look at this slide. It tells you where to find them on Instagram, also how to contact them through their email. And they are great at communicating, so they will get back to you quickly if you're interested in a commission or just talking more about their art practice. And I'm just really grateful that we got to chat today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having us,
Yeah,
Shauna. You did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I can't wait to see the next things that you all put on view.
Well, we will keep you posted.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.